Is there a game that you feel like is your favorite of all time?
That's what my wife says.
I have stopped watching the whole franchise because it's too convoluted.
You're literally testing out your own framework on twin daughters. Like you have the best, you have the best home test setup.
Welcome to the GOAT Show, the show where we celebrate and debate all things great. I am joined by my co-hosts, Fresh and Deezy. Gentlemen, good to see you. Good to see you. Man, we have a really cool show today with a really interesting guest. Our guest is YU-KAI CHOU. He is someone I've known for a long time, someone whose work I have woven into everything that I've done for many years. He is a gamification expert and an expert on behavioral design. And we will get to him in a second. But before we do, Fresh, what the people got to do?
You gotta like, you gotta subscribe, you gotta comment, you gotta hit the bell, you gotta send it to your mom, you gotta send it to your aunt, send it to your best friend, send it to your boss. Let him know how he can fix up the workplace.
Hey, send it to your kids because they're gonna, this might be, if you're a parent, this might be an amazing episode that'll teach you how to motivate your kids to do the things that you want them to do. But the last thing I'll say also is if you haven't already, check us out on drip.haus, drip.haus. It's the GOAT Show. We are dropping digital collectibles there. And Drip is a platform that uses gamification. So it's one of those things where I feel like at some point we should connect YU-KAI to maybe the founder there, Vibu, who we're going to be interviewing or have interviewed, but we'll be releasing that interview shortly in the near future. But without further ado, I want to welcome my guest, YU-KAI CHOU. YU-KAI, how are you doing today, man? Where in the world are you right now?
I'm in Taiwan right now. I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for about 12 years. And during COVID, I moved to Taiwan to dodge it for a few months. But then I fell in love with Taiwan and I just decided to stay here.
What would you say? I've only been to Taiwan very briefly when I was flying to Vietnam. So it was just in the airport. But what would you say is the one thing, if someone goes to Taiwan, the one thing they should do or experience?
I think just check out the food. A lot of the casual street food is really good. A lot of people actually fly from Hong Kong to Taiwan just to eat.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then, Taiwan has one of the tallest buildings in the world, Taipei 101, which is a nice place to check out. It used to be the number one tallest. I think now it's like 11 because everyone's competing for that biggest pointy thing on the top.
Yeah. Isn't Toronto getting something big? Or no, Toronto already has one.
Toronto had the tallest freestanding structure in the world for a long time. It was a wonder of the world, but now there's like the Burj Khalifa and stuff like that has surpassed it.
Right. Well, YU-KAI, we met. My story with you really starts in, I think around about when was I in LA? Like 2013, 2014, I think was when it starts. When I was living there, I was part of my first startup ever was there, and we had an advisor, and we were doing a social gaming startup based on Twitter, funny enough. And that advisor, when he came on, was like, "Hey, you should really talk to this YU-KAI CHOU guy. You guys are building this kind of gaming layer on Twitter, and this dude is the expert on everything related to gamifying anything." So we did a little research. We found out about your book, and I saw your TED Talk. So we're going to put that in the show notes. But yeah, and just from my own personal experience, everything that I learned from you and your Octalysis framework is stuff that I've used for everything, every project, to the point where before the project even begins, I'll start to think of ways, and I'll have my own little chart that I have with all the listed motivators, and I will try and figure out, okay, how can this apply to whatever I'm working on. So I'm really happy that you're on the show today, because this is a conversation long in the running. We have never met face to face, literally. It's always been through LinkedIn or email or things like that, or phone calls. So just want to let you know that it's a real privilege. But I guess I just want to first start off with, you grew up in San Francisco. Were you always a gamer growing up? Was that something that you were passionate about?
As far as I can remember, maybe since 5 years old, I was a gamer. But that's not even a comment, like a weird thing. I think a lot of kids in my generation, the moment they could touch a video game, they had one at home, they became a gamer.
What was your first gaming system?
The NES.
NES.
Yeah.
And did you have a favorite? Or actually, is there a game that you feel like is your favorite of all time?
I think the one that blew my mind the most was StarCraft 1 when it came out. And StarCraft 1 actually created the esports industry, right? And the Koreans started to have, TV channels dedicated to have people competing on StarCraft. This is back in maybe 2001 or 2. And so, yeah, I didn't imagine a video game or computer game could be so good that, adults take it seriously and people could really get in on full time and watch shows on it. So I think that was the one that blew my mind. But of course, later on there were a lot more other games that did amazing things too.
Well, listen. So I gotta admit, I got a deep, dark confession I have to make. Fresh and Deezy make fun of me all the time. For the last 20 years, man, even longer than that. Not since GoldenEye. All right, I haven't played any games. I really haven't. These guys, they've been playing. What are you guys playing? Red Dead Redemption.
Right now, I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3.
Baldur's. What about you, Deezy? What are you playing?
My best friend got me into playing Anthem. I don't know if you guys.
No, what's that? What is that?
You fly around in this suit and you just like complete missions and shit. It's pretty fun. You do co-op campaign, but dude, I'm a big Halo nerd. We're talking about games. Like I'm a Halo champion for Halo 3. Used to play that shit competitively.
Well, yeah. So I mean, so YU-KAI, yeah, they make fun of me for games and all that stuff. But that said, I mean, I feel like I do have a certain understanding of games based on your work. I'm kind of curious. So, you were a gamer. Where did this gamification stuff? Because it's one thing to just be a gamer and to do your thing. How did it, jump into this idea of, okay, let's take the things of life and let's add a gaming layer on top of it?
Yeah, and this is actually going to be related to my second book, 10,000 Hours of Play, that's coming out, I think, in February.
Okay, right.
But I think it all goes back to 2003, where I was playing this game called Diablo 2, which is a RPG. You run around the character, you level up, you get skill points, and then you get allies, you do quests and all that stuff. So I spent over 1,000 hours playing this game and leveling up, getting a lot of gold, getting good gear. And then at one point, my friends who played it with me started to quit the game and move on to another game. So I was like, okay, I guess I should quit too. And then I was in between this quitting one game and starting another game, and I felt really, really empty. I felt like just a big part of my life just disappeared. And even though my in-game characters were all amazing, in real life I was still the same loser. So I thought, hey, wouldn't it be better if there was a game where the more hours you spend on it, the better your real life is? And so, and people are playing the game, they can't just quit, they can't leave. And so I realized that, oh, it's the game of life that everyone's playing, and it actually has the same things. In life, you want to know what the game objective is, what are your goals in life. You need to know your attributes, your talents. Are you better at strength or intelligence or agility? And then you can pick your role in the game based on your attributes. Are you going to be a warrior or a mage? And then based on that, you choose to assign skill points. So those are the things you acquire, and you read books, you take workshops on. Then you build alliance and take on quests. So I started seeing my life as a game, and from that day on, like, everything changed. I went from being a pretty mediocre, at the time I was still a student, so I was a mediocre student, to like an excellent student. And I started my first company in first year in college, and I did a lot of things relatively well because everyone was doing the bare minimum. Everyone was trying to use their discipline to do it, and I just enjoyed doing it. I did it with passion, which meant it was like, assuming same talent level, it was relatively easy to beat them at that stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to ask you about for sure. Because one way you describe gamification, and you do this in your TED talk from way back when, but and I'm curious if you still feel the same way. But another way to describe gamification is behavioral design. In other words, you're I don't know, how would you well, actually, how would you describe behavioral design, and do you still feel like that's a synonym for gamification?
Yeah, so I usually say gamification, it uses behavioral design, but I like to use the word human focused design, which is in opposition to function focused design. So, function focused design assumes that people already have motivation to do the behavior and then optimize for efficiency, for usability, for being intuitive. Whereas human focused design assumes that people don't have motivation, or at least don't have enough motivation, and on every step of the way is trying to get people to be more motivated to do it. So add more curiosity, more social influence, add more feeling of accomplishment. And so that in the essence is gamification. Just every step that we try to make people want to do it even more and be more motivated to it.
Right, right. Oh, I love all this stuff. It's super cool. So you and I don't know how this sort of came about, but you at some point you create a model uh, called the Octalysis framework, and this is what I talk about when I'm like saying I use this all the time, and that framework has and let me know if it's changed any since we looked at it, but it has eight core drives to it that are the essential what you're talking about human focused motivators. I'm assuming. Do you mind taking us through that framework? I know it's a lot, but maybe just sort of the basics of it, so that people who are watching who've never heard of it can get a sense of what this is.
Yeah. So again, what I'm most known for, because I created probably like 25 frameworks, but my most known framework is the Octalysis. And it's a combination between the word octagon and analysis. So it's a visual octagon. And inside there's what we call the 8 core drives that motivate all our behavior. And so these include core drive one, epic meaning and calling. You're doing something because you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. There's core drive two, development and accomplishment, which is the feeling of leveling up, improving yourself, achieving mastery. There's core drive three, empowerment of creativity and feedback, which is basically meaningful choices, strategy, self-expression, and autonomy. And then there's core drive four, ownership and possession, which is basically like collecting something or accumulating something or organizing something, improving something that you own, or if you are you're collecting more of it, you are also if you customize a lot of things that you already own, you feel more attachment, hence a higher sense of ownership to that. There's core drive five, social influence of relatedness, which is everything you do based on what other people do, think, or say. So that includes competition, collaboration, group quests, gifting, things like that. Core Drive 6 is scarcity and impatience. So it's basically saying we want something simply because we can't have it or it's very difficult to obtain. And Core Drive 7 is unpredictability and curiosity. So that's saying we want, because we don't know what's going to happen next, we're always thinking about it. So that's heavily utilized in the gambling industry. But whenever you have a sweepstakes program, a lottery, a raffle ticket system, we have the core drive. It's also the drive that makes us want to finish a book or a movie. That's curiosity. So that's why we don't like spoilers. And then core drive 8 is loss and avoidance, which is you don't want something bad to happen. It's the fear core drive, or fear of missing out, FOMO core drive. And so again, those are obviously very quickly summarizing what those 8 core drives are. But, but the key thing is that without these 8 core drive, there's zero motivation, no behavior happens. Like everything we do in life is based on those 8. So even the drive to like eat and stay alive is part of those 8 core drives, like loss and avoidance if you're just trying to stay alive, and social influence of eating socially. And then I don't know if you want me to go into the white hat, black hat, intrinsic, extrinsic stuff yet, but
Before we do, I just want to say, well, this is what I find so fascinating about your framework, and really how it really has impacted my life personally, because these drives, if you took the whole gaming side out of it, because like if you say gamification, people have like an idea of what that looks like, or it's like leaderboards or badges, which is all part of it. I mean, that's one aspect of it, the collecting part and that type of stuff. But what I love about it is that it gave me a lot of context about how humans just behave in general. Like, and we're gonna put up in the show notes, we'll put up the diagram of the chart, and you can go to YU-KAI's website. I think it's octalysisgroup.com. and look at all this stuff, because it's fascinating and it's worth really digging into for anybody who's watching out there. But so for instance, like epic meaning and calling, right? I mean, you don't think about it, but like a lot of what human beings do, or for instance, like, and not to bring the show down, but some disaster stuff happening in North Carolina recently, and like it's really inspiring to see that people are stepping up to the challenge of going there, helping out, doing things, and it's because of that core motivator of epic meaning and calling. For certain individuals, that is a huge motivator for them. And then in my own life, it's also like I ask myself all that time. So I'll ask that to myself. I'm like, what is my epic? Like, what's the meaning of this? Like, why? What am I striving for that's bigger than myself? So that kind of that's what I love about each of these. Like development and accomplishment is kind of clear what that is. It's just wanting to accomplish things. Creativity for me, feedback, like, yeah, it's like, and I don't know why that is. Why do you think that is? Like, why is it that when we create things or we design things ourselves, what is it that makes us feel motivated to do that, or inspires us?
Because we like to manifest our uniqueness into this world. It's not following linear patterns, not doing what people gave to us. We have this uniqueness and we present it, which is why this core drive is called empowerment of creativity and feedback. We want to see the feedback of this. So, like for instance, if a kid just finished their math homework and they show it to their parents, that's core drive 2, development accomplishment. They just want to get brownie points. Look, I finished, check mark, I'm that good. But if they use their creativity and they drew something unique, right? They're constantly saying, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Right? Because again, that's their unique thing imprinted on the world. And they really want to see how the world receives it, or does it work as well as they thought, things like that. It's a more intrinsic drive, which again, we haven't got to yet.
Yeah, and not to jump it too far ahead, but like I feel like with social media, that a lot of these drives combine together, like the drive of unpredictability and curiosity, the drive of social influence and relatedness, and when and that's the other thing I love about the framework you've created, is because once you know these things, you can kind of see it in the world. You can see like why is social media popular? Well, it combines so many of these different drives together in one place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I got a question for you. Do you have like I guess it would be kind of like a personality test that kind of tells people where they like what core drives they use most in their life? Like I could guess for myself, I'm at like I use 1, 3, 5, and 8 the most. Like those are probably the ones that drive most of my decisions. But I was just curious if you had any kind of test or anything like that for people to engage with this theory.
Uh, Someone in my company is working on a better kind of test kind of such thing going on. But for me, what we usually like to do is we like to just explore what games people like to play, like look at all the games or things you do for fun or voluntarily. Like it could be video games or it could be board games or golf, or even if you're workaholic, your work. And you try to figure out like what core drives are in those games. And some people end up realize, wow, every game that I enjoy are social games, right? Core Drive 5, social influence, brilliance, or all those games have this big grand storytelling where I'm the significant character in that world, which is epic meaning and calling. Or all of them have a lot of scarcity. They keep saying, oh, it's very hard, it's very I don't like to play easy games where I win very quickly. I like to play games that make it very difficult, and I'm constantly staring at resources I can't get and the countdown timers. I'm sucked into that. And so when you start seeing a lot of those patterns in the games you voluntarily engage in, then you can understand your own core drive motivations better.
That's cool. That's super cool. And that's a good test. All right. Very, very cool. So there is a design to Octalysis, and that's how you kind of like separate these drives. I'm sorry. Excuse me. So one is the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators, and the other, I believe, is white hat and black hat. Can you explain kind of those differences and how the different quadrants create the different motivators?
Yeah. So the language we use normally is we call them left brain versus right brain core drives, but then we have to then say it's not necessarily geographically on the left side versus right side. It's just the left brain core drive symbolically represents the logical brain, and the right brain core drive symbolically represents our emotional brain. But it's a design tool, so I like the elegance of left side, left brain, right brain of the octagon. And so then to your point, what's actionable about this is the left brain core drives deal with extrinsic motivation. So things you do for reward, a purpose, or a goal, but you don't necessarily enjoy the activity itself. So once you obtain the reward, you hit your goals, or you get used to the reward, it becomes stale, you stop doing the behavior. Whereas the right brain core drives deal with intrinsic motivation, these things you just enjoy doing to the point that you're even willing to spend money just to experience in it. And even if you lost all your progress the next day, you lose your certificate, your badges, your NFTs, whatever, you would still do the activity today because that's how we measure our quality of lives. How much time we spend on things we just enjoy doing. So again, those are the left brain, right brain core drive. There's obviously a lot more deeper implications of left brain versus right brain, but that's a big summary of what they mean.
I want to ask you about real quick about the NFT thing, because that's something that I was a part of. Me and Fresh and Deezy, we were for in 2022 and all that. We did a whole NFT thing. We're currently on Drip. I don't know if you've heard of Drip, YU-KAI. If you haven't, I definitely want to show you that. Where you mint collectibles and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just curious. I think core motivator 4, right? Ownership and possession. That's sort of the thing that drives the whole digital collectibles market on some level.
The NFT, there's a few different core drive. Of course, owning something is core drive 4, but what makes that especially valuable has other core drives attached to it. So there's core drive 6, scarcity and patience. It's not just infinite digital abundance. It's the blockchain ensures that there's only this many of them out there. So that's core drive 6, scarcity. You want core drive 1, epic, meaning, and calling. So it actually represents something important, because if something's scarce but it has no meaning, it's like a sand, then no one really cares about that little grain of sand that's different from all the grains of sand out there. But if it represents something, so for instance, I have a friend who owns a broken rugged couch, and it doesn't work very well as a couch. It doesn't have good utility or cosmetics, but he cherishes it because it used to be Winston Churchill's couch, and he considers Winston Churchill his war hero. So it has meaning, and therefore he thinks is very, very valuable. And then finally, there's core drive 5, social influence and relatedness, which is basically there's a whole community of people who also believe in this meaning, right? So if my friend was the only person who likes Winston Churchill, then he'll like the couch, but he can't really sell it to anyone else, or no one else will think it's valuable. But if there's a whole community who believes in that, then there's liquidity in that, and he could pass it on to someone else who would pass on to someone who values it even more.
So, well, I want to. That kind of leads into core drive 5, which I find of any drive, this one is the most fascinating to me and the most dangerous, which is social influence and relatedness. The idea, like, why do people form into this is the whole idea of what teams and groupthink and these types of things that motivate people to engage in all kinds of behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, social influence is one of the more well-studied and well-recognized core drive. So like every company's like, oh, we want to make it viral, we want to be social, and we know we're constantly under social pressures in school and peer pressure, all that stuff. So it is pretty well recognized, but it is quite powerful, the effects of social norming and competition, all those things. So yeah, I think it's powerful. But for instance, I think core drive is scarcity. That would be the last core drive I personally learned, because it's the least intuitive. Like, it's like you want something just because you can't have it. Like if people say, hey, just tell all your friends to join, you don't really care. But if they tell you, hey, you're only allowed to invite 3 friends, then they're like, oh yeah, so who's one of my 3 buddies who deserves to get a ticket to join, like Clubhouse or whatever, right? By limiting how many times people can do something, you actually create desire. So that is actually really interesting. But all of them have special scenarios and things that make it really interesting, exciting. But yeah, it just depends on at that moment what strikes your fancy.
Right. So the other part of this, so there's a left brain, right brain side, but then there's the white hat, black hat. Can you explain what that means and how that applies to the diagram?
Yeah, so left brain, right brain is left side and right side of the octagon, and so there's the top versus bottom. Whereas the top, we call them white hat motivation core drives, which are like if you're doing something because you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, and you are improving yourself, achieving mastery, you're using your creativity. It feels very, very good. You feel in control, but the problem is that there's no urgency, so you procrastinate, right? Because you're in full control. Whereas the black hat motivation core drives make people feel urgent, obsessed, even addicted. But in the long run, it could leave a bad taste in the mouth because they're not in control of their own behavior. So if you're always doing something just to avoid a loss, just because you can't have something, or just because you don't know what's going to happen next, again, it's still very powerful in driving that behavior, but we burn out. And so the reason why black hat motivation makes us feel like we're not in control is because it's tied to our survival instincts. And so avoiding danger, going after scarce resources, and exploring uncharted lands, those help survive. But that's also why we feel like we're not in control, because we feel like we're hardwired to act on these things, respond to environments that way. But in the long run, if we're constantly in that type of mode, we just don't feel like we don't feel in control. We don't feel that happy. So again, white hat makes people feel powerful, in control. They feel good, no urgency. So it's good for long-term things like community management, loyalty programs, for innovative workspaces. And black hat motivation is good for one-time transactions, like you just want people to pay money, give you their credit cards, or short bursts of activity. Like if you have a 1 week competition in your company, it feels exciting, thrilling, adrenaline's high, people are trash talking. But if it's a year-long competition, then most people don't like to be in a constant state of competing with their coworkers and colleagues, and it creates a cutthroat culture. People burn out. So here's an example of the white hat, black hat extrinsic, right? So on the right bottom of the octagon is core drive 7, unpredictability and curiosity. So again, it's on the right bottom, which means right brain, black hat. That means we feel intrinsically enjoying the experience, but we feel out of control. So that's kind of like you wanted to go to bed at 10 p.m., but then you binge watch Netflix to 2 in the morning, right? Your brain enjoyed it, it's intrinsic, but you felt out of control. It's black hat. So by looking at by first identifying the type of motivation, and then knowing the nature of it, it's a white hat, black hat, intrinsic, extrinsic, you can understand the nature of it. And as a result, you can design for things that produce the right type of consequence that you're looking for.
Right. And that's where, working with someone like you, consulting on things like this, which we had a while ago with our startup, but I'm sure you do every day with a lot of different companies. That's where, you do need someone like you and your team to help with like really figuring out some of the core goals and of whatever mission you're trying to do to like fine tune it and make it the appropriate amount. Because I think you were saying that like with black hat motivation stuff, you should really use it sparingly, or you should use it much less than you would use white hat stuff. Is that accurate, or you know what I'm saying?
It just depends on the scenario, but yeah, generally speaking, you want to have the general experience to be more white hat, and then black hat in short bursts. So the environment feels comfortable and nice. You feel in control, and then you have to do something in 2 days, and there's this very curious thing that happens. But it again depends on the goal. Some projects want not daily active users or users to come back 10 times a day, and they would use different solutions.
I mean, I feel like in relationships, this. I mean, I don't know if you've gone there with it, but in relationships, the Octalysis applies. Like, having epic meaning, calling for what, and whatever relationship, whether it's your partner, like a romantic relationship or friendship or professional relationship, like it's like using these sort of tools, um if they're studied well enough and understood, like you can keep like if things get stale, like okay, like there's what's wrong here is that there's not enough unpredictability. We need to like kind of shock the system a little bit, and that kind of creates a new sort of jolt of activity or something, and keeps things interesting. But okay, we got to pull it back, and we have to keep in mind like the bigger vision of this thing. I mean, because you were saying that before we hopped on the show, that you were talking about how you can use these things like you're like with your kids, you're using some of these tools to help them to, or how do you use these tools with with your kids and other people in your life to to motivate them, I guess.
Yeah. So one example is with my kids, I'd use some epic meaning and calling in the form of family pride. So like I would say, hey, you're part of the Chow family, and therefore you should behave like this. This is how the Chow family behaves. And so it's kind of like in Game of Thrones, right? It's like, oh, the Lannister always pays their debts, and the Stark is about staying together, all that stuff. And and this is useful because if they come to me and say, well, Bobby at school, he was being honest, so why should I be honest? And I can just say, well, he's not part of the Chow family, and you are, so he doesn't have to be honest, but you do, right? And so it's not about you'll get benefits, I'll reward you with it, or you need to be a good kid. It's really you're upholding family honor. That's a epic meaning calling, something bigger than yourself, and and that works pretty well. There's the scarcity I put in. So there's like obviously a lot of positive reinforcement in this form of a small cheer and everything, but those are abundant. Those are just core drive to development accomplishment. But I also wanted to bake in the more scarce type of achievement. So there's something I call it calls the thumbs up basically, but it's very hard earned. Like I give one maybe, I don't know, every 2 to 4 months when they truly do something that is above what I expect they could do. When they were like 1.5 or 2, one time, I have twin daughters, right? Symphony and harmony, which is make it pretty interesting to see how these techniques work differently on them and their different personalities. But I Symphony says, "Hey, I finished all my food," and I'm like, "Oh wow, you finished by yourself. That's great for your age and whatnot." So I was like, "Here's a thumbs up." And then Harmony says, "No, she didn't completely finish it yet." And I literally withdrew the thumbs as I nope, you can't have it until you actually finish your whole food because. And then they realize it's a serious thing. They have to earn it. And sometimes when I give one the thumbs up, the other one gets really like upset. So there's the abundant kind of celebration and high five, but then there's the thumbs up, which actually stands for something that they're really proud of. And so you bake in those core drives into parenting, and you see different effects. Like I said, it's the coolest thing is the twins were born with different personalities. Like in the hospital, within 10 minutes, their personalities were radically different. And so I have to constantly be thinking, okay, this one works for Symphony, but not for Harmony. And sometimes if they were just like by themselves, it would work. But when you put them together, it's even more complicated because you can't just be like, okay, one of you is reward, one of you is punishment, right? Because then they'll see each other and be like, wait, that's not fair. So yeah, that makes my work kind of fun and interesting too. That's my core drive 3: empowerment of creativity and feedback.
Interesting. Yeah, I love it, man.
It's fascinating, man. You literally have you're literally testing out your own framework on twin daughters. Like you have the best you have the best home test setup where you can actually test this out on with your parenting. That's insane.
Yeah.
I definitely know the what do you call it? The scarcity. Like that was my parents, Asian parents. I don't know. Like they have a way of there's like a standard that you're supposed to meet, and then to get the praise, you really got to do something great. So when it happens, it's like, oh my gosh, like it means so much more. I don't know. And I don't want to get you in trouble or anything, but I also kind of wonder about like our culture here in the U.S. of giving everybody rewards, for participation. If that actually is a good, is that a good thing or is it actually not the right thing? Like it's better to have real rewards for real action. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but
I mean, it's good for a short-term dopamine push to get people to get kids, right? We're talking about kids to do the right behavior. So you can put them on a good track because of that, but they become a bit more spoiled and they expect positive reinforcement all the time, but yet it means very little for them. So it's still good to have that scarcity. And this is why, if you notice, what's interesting is you talked about you can use the framework to analyze social media, right? For the younger generation, social media was like you can do anything, and suddenly like Twitter comes out, and it's like, well, it's basically. I remember at the time, right? Everyone's was saying, "Oh, it's just Facebook, but you're only allowed to share 140 messages." Like, wait, that limitation makes it interesting. And then you have Snapchat comes out and said, "Well, it's a message that disappears. It's not going to be around forever." So because there's so much abundance, suddenly the scarcity makes things more valuable and precious, and they value that because everything else is public, it's abundant. They get all the information at their fingertips. But then also, when you notice a new trend coming up, that's like, wow, this is the hot thing. You'll also notice that like Snapchat, right? It's a black hat kind of design. So it's going to be hot for a while, but then people just burn out. It's not kind of long lasting. So you can use the framework to see if a trend would go viral or not, but afterwards would it be sustaining or not.
Interesting. I think Fresh, you had a question about some things. I think one of them was just, or go ahead. I think you're saying about the framework itself.
Yeah, I just was wondering, like, do you think that it's for everybody?
What is for everybody?
The Octalysis framework? Like, do you think that everybody can use it?
Yes. So I was wondering if you mean like if everyone could use it or it works on everyone. That was what I was trying to figure out. And yeah, I think so. I use it on an hourly basis because whenever you interact with people, you deal with motivations, right? Some people learn it. They say it's like being unplugged from the matrix. Everywhere they go, they see green code, like, oh, that's core drive 3, that's core drive 5, that's core drive 7. One time someone told me they jokingly that it's like a curse. It's like once you see these core drives, you can't unsee it. But like every email you read, every email you send, every political message, marketing campaign, you see these core drives, with parenting, with, people, as long as you're interacting with humans, first you'll see these core drives, and then you can also understand how to manage your communication better and your persuasiveness and all those things. And you can design your workplace environment better to be more motivating, have more momentum in your workflow. So I would recommend everyone to use it, at least have the knowledge of it and try to apply it.
Cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about, because in my own personal experience, I've used it in a few different ways. One is what we just talked about, sort of in kind of interacting with people, relationships. But a big way that I've used it is in product design. And I'm just kind of curious: is there a singular game or experience that someone can engage in that includes all of these different drives, and you can see it in action as you play the game or as you engage in the experience?
Well, the thing is that playing a game that's really good takes a lot of time. But I'd say like World of Warcraft is probably a good game to experience all of these acorns if you're aware. Because keep in mind, a lot of people play through these games, all these games, and they just get sucked into it, but they don't understand why they're doing it, and they don't understand the effects and psychological triggers for it. And like literally everyone who played the games that I played when I was growing up could create the Octalysis framework, right? They experienced the same thing as I did, but it seems like they were not able to, or they weren't even aware that they could. So you have to have that awareness. But I skipped out on World of Warcraft during the college years and professional years because I know once I touch it, I'm going to be addicted to it. But then it eventually came to the case where a lot of my clients, they were the generation that grew up with World of Warcraft, right? It's been 20 years. They just celebrated their 20-year anniversary. And so it's like the founder of Ethereum, right? Vitalik, he's a big World of Warcraft fan. So he would use terms like soulbound, which I believe comes from World of Warcraft. I don't know if it's originally from WoW, but I believe so. And a lot of these terms, the concept my clients will bring up, it's like, oh, it's like the World of Warcraft reputation system. So I'm like, okay, I guess I should probably dive into it now. I should play it. And then 1,500 hours go by. Yeah, literally. And yeah. But I did learn a lot, and immediately after during that time and after that, I applied a lot of things I learned to new client projects. So my hack is that when I play these games, it's not a waste of time because I get to actually improve my output for my work.
Sure, YU-KAI. All right.
That's what my wife says. Yeah, that is definitely my wife's attitude. But yeah, I think the game that I respect the most is probably Candy Crush, because it reaches the most amount of demographics. Like my mother-in-law, who's like 78 years old, she plays it every day. And I know a lot of when I'm in India, I'm in the airport, and employees, when they're not working, they're playing Candy Crush. I noticed there, and and it's not like when I play it, I get sucked into it, and then I stop playing, and then my wife was playing, and I was looking at it, and I'm like trying to solve them, like give it to me, and I start playing it, and I'm like, it's not even the game that I'm comfortably playing, and so it reaches a large demographic. It monetizes very well, and we already know it's long lasting too, right? Most mobile games, 2 to 5 years, but Candy Crush, I think it's been around for 10 years or something, and it's still doing quite well. So I think it's one of the best games to meet its objectives. It doesn't have core drive on Epic Media Calling though, which is why I say World of Warcraft. But World of Warcraft is a bit. It has a more niche focus for certain demographics.
Hey man, I can vouch for that. My mom, that's the only game I see my mom play, like Candy Crush. It's yeah, it's I don't know what it is. Old Indians like Candy Crush, but
A lot of people, like not just old Indians, old a lot of people, but also young people too. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Um, one question I have is for us. We're a podcast. We're trying to grow, man. All right. And we have some strategies that we're working on, but I'm just curious, is there any recommendation that you could suggest to us to help us grow the Goat Show into motivate more people to listen to the Goat Show and subscribe and do all the things we would like them to do?
Well, I don't really know what you do right now, so it kind of just depends on what your goals are and what you're doing. But
Look, it is our mission in life to bring you, the audience, into the world of goatedness. Is that Epic Meaning and Calling? Is that one thing we could try more of?
if it has believability, so every core drive has pros and cons, and so Epic Meaning and Calling, when it works, is very powerful. It makes people do sacrificial actions for the higher vision. But the thing is that the con is that it has to be believable, because if people think it's not real, like they're not really changing the world through you, or something like that, then they just think it's a slap in the face. Or if anything, it could be cheesy. So they have to, and there's a whole literature about how to add believability and all those things like that. But basically, I would say one thing you can think about doing is, for instance, you have if you want to have more unpredictable scarcity between each episode, right? Because what happens is a lot of episodes are just independent on their own. So people feel like, yeah, I can miss one or two or three. It doesn't really matter. I'm just jumping to the latest one. But if you have more of a coherent connection to each, like the end of every episode, there is something like a question, a trivia, or a brain teaser, or a little quest you put them on, and at the beginning of each one, it's saying, oh yeah, this is the answer to the question from the last one, or the scavenger hunt result, whatnot. Then people feel like there's a continuation between 1 to 2 and 3 and 4, and so they feel like they shouldn't miss anything. So that's like 30-second consulting.
Yeah. Thank you for the free consultation. We will look into implementing your suggestion. Yeah.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah. Because then if you see the second episode and you start it off with like, here's what we learned from the last episode, they're like, what are you talking about? And then they got to go to the other episode and then watch it. And so it's smart. I like that.
Yeah. And even if you don't do it like very like in people's faces, like if you just say, yeah, just like we saw from the last episode, blah blah blah, just like we saw, like of course we mentioned this last episode, or they're just like, oh wow, like I feel like I'm really missing out by not seeing the last episode, right?
Yeah, man, you're a genius, man.
But the key is that you want to make it manageable. So it shouldn't be like, oh yeah, just like episode 7 we said this 3 blah blah blah, because then it feels so overwhelming and they won't do it. So here's the problem with Disney Plus, okay, with Avengers. So Avengers, they create an effect where when they release a new movie, it will reference or will have characters from the previous Avenger movies, right? So when they release a new movie, even though you don't care about that one hero, okay, you're like, yeah, I should probably watch it. I have to watch it, because when the real Avenger movie I want to watch comes out, it assumes I already watched it, and so I should, right? But the problem with Disney Plus, So that's why some people call Disney minus, is that they just want abundance of content. Suddenly there's like 7 series, all like, I don't know, like 80 episodes long, and for characters you don't like. And you're like, oh, I don't want to spend so much time watching characters that I don't care about. But then I won't know what's going to happen with the real Avengers movie. And so therefore I don't even want to watch that one anymore. So I give up altogether.
I am an example of that. I am an example. I have stopped watching the whole franchise because it's too convoluted. I will not be able to keep up, and I don't want to half know what's going on.
Yeah, basically that's it. So, but if it's like, hey, you just have to catch up on one thing and you can go do it, then yeah, you might do it. But now there's like hundreds of hours of episodes that you have to catch up on to even know what's going on, and so it's like, nah, probably not that interested anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wanted to ask you about your new book. What can you give us a kind of a preview of what we can expect and what the concept of it is?
Yeah, so basically it's called 10,000 Hours of Play, and it's basically using Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours to achieve mastery kind of concept. And it says, well, if you gamify your life correctly, then it doesn't have to be 10,000 hours of blood, sweat, and tears. It could be 10,000 hours of enjoyment, having fun, doing what you like, and then after all that gameplay, you're successful and you're living an amazing, happy life. So it breaks down game of life into 6 major steps, and the first 3 are what we call know yourself, and the last 3 are what we call grow yourself. And it kind of goes through that order that I just mentioned. Like step 1 is choose your game that you're playing in your life, and that's based on your passion, not about your talents or your skills. Because I believe that even if you don't have that much skills, right? Let's say you would only fit to be a janitor, right, and nothing else. If you're passionate about music, you'd be happier working at a music company as a janitor than a truck company. But if you're passionate about trucks, then it'll be the other way around. So the key thing is understand what you care about first, what you're passionate about. And some people, it's about solving the climate change, or bringing peace, or just reaching a top of an organization, or having a stable family. It doesn't matter what their game is. It's just they know what their game is in life that will make it meaningful. And step 2 is to know your attributes. So what are your gifts and talents are, and those are not skills you can learn. Okay, that comes in step 4. So it's like having good emotional intelligence. You can't just read a book or take a workshop and you have emotional intelligence or perseverance. You kind of get born with a lot of it, and then in over years you can slowly develop some of things through life experiences. But it's to understand what is your core being and use that to decide on the role in your game. So if you have quantitative skills, let's say your game is to solve climate change. Let's say that's the thing, and if you have quantitative skills, you can be an engineer, right, and try to create some kind of clean energy machine that helps with climate change. But let's say you don't have those talents, you have more communication, persuasive skills. You can still choose to be a diplomat and negotiate international treaties that are good for the environment, right? So it's same game, different attribute, different roles, but you can push that. And then the next 3 steps is grow yourself. So then it's the skills you need to enhance. So, all right, once I know I am a whatever diplomat, right? Then it's all right. I need to have multiple language skills that I have to learn. I need to learn how to do high tension negotiations. I need to do all these things. So you start creating a skill tree. We call that a skill triangle anyway, but it's about what you need to learn and how to pick that up. How do you acquire these skills? Then step 5 is building alliances. So connecting with people who are playing the same game as you, but they're having different roles. So you can like assist each other and help each other, like Steve Jobs and Wozniak kind of situation. Finding mentors are helpful, and mentoring others, because even though you think, oh, this guy's just a student, I have this experience, right? I was helping some high school student that reached out to me. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I had some time, so I was doing that. And then time goes by really fast. So I think it was like, I don't know, like 7, 8 years later, he reaches me, hey, YU-KAI, I just started a company and we raised like $15 million. I really appreciate your mentorship, and, could you give me some advice? I'm like, oh, wow, that's crazy. So even mentees level up to become, your allies. And then finally, step 6 is to take on quests. So, these are the things that help you grow your skills towards the game you're playing and build chemistry with your allies, all that stuff. So for each of these 6 steps, I take one historical, like legendary figure to say how that one step changed their life. So step 1 is choose your game, and I use Gandhi an example. Like Gandhi's game was just to move to London and become a successful lawyer and live comfortably. But then his attributes didn't support it, so he did his job so poorly that that no one wanted to hire him anymore. So he had to press the reset button and move to South Africa to try again. And on the train ride there, he experienced racism, and that's when he changed his game. He wanted to create more equality in the world, especially in his home country of India. And when he changed his game, he changed his life, and that's when he became the legendary Gandhi, right? Because he had a different game now. And then step 2 is, I'm not going to go through all the details, but step 2 is Disney, where he realized he wanted to be a comedian. His game is to make every kid in the world smile, because he had a very tough childhood, and the only time he was happy was when he was making other kids laugh through like being a comedy figure, because he loved Charlie Chaplin. But then he realized he had talents in animation, etc., etc. Later on, he had his IP taken away by a businessman, and that's when he realized that to finish his game, it doesn't matter to make like the most kids smile. It doesn't matter who creates the IP; it matters who owns the IP. So then he creates a guild that attracts all the best storytellers in the world to create IP that Disney will own and distribute, right? And so you could have amazing high-level storytellers who never really create a conglomerate like Disney does. They just keep telling their stories. So that's Disney. Then we have Oprah with choosing your role. We have Elon Musk with enhance your skills. Da Vinci with building alliances. He was considered a loser before he was like 40 because he couldn't surround himself with the right people. And step 6 is Mary Curie. So yeah, the book is basically about how do you use these 6 steps to turn your life into a huge success, but also how historical figures obviously they didn't follow those 6 steps, but what they did in their life was in parallel, or it was aligned with those 6 steps.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait. I can't wait for that. And I have a feeling that we definitely will probably have you back on if you're willing, once the book's out and we've read it and all that kind of stuff. So, man, that's awesome. Can't wait. I don't know, guys. Do you have any other questions, Fresh, Deezy, for YU-KAI here?
I mean, I have a bunch of questions, but what I'll ask you is, what's your favorite company that you've worked with, and how did you help them with gamification?
There's a lot of. It's interesting because most people ask me what my favorite project is for the hardest project, and there's a lot of different things like gamifying SEC compliance training for financial firms, making learn about compliance more fun and exciting, which is not the default anyway. And then there are projects that we have for saving lives, safety driving. We work with insurance companies, driving safely, or taking your pills, or safety in steel manufacturing. So we do believe we've saved some lives because of that, even though it's hard to measure how many people would have died if we didn't do anything. But I think the favorite company that I've worked with was Lego in Denmark. You can tell they had like an amazing culture. They really install that believability with epic meaning and calling. So it's funny because in a meeting they'll say, "Oh, these are the 6 things Lego stand for. Inspire creative play, blah 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 blah." Right? And when I met with some other companies in Denmark, I was just name dropping like, "Oh yeah, we work with Lego here," and they're like, "Oh, Lego, these guys are so annoying," and I'm like, "Oh really? Why?" And it's like, "Oh, because in every meeting they will say, before we start, let us remind you of our 6 principles. For number 1 is like, we know you tell us in every single meeting, right?" But they do that. They also add more believability in the sense that when they work with them, they say, "Hey, look, YU-KAI, even though we believe our DNA is core drive 3, empowerment of creative and feedback, right, inspiring creative play, the biggest money makers in the history and like are the the Avengers set, the Star Wars set, and basically there's not a lot of creativity anymore. You just follow the manual, you put it together, and once you assemble it, usually that's when you take it apart and build your own things based on your creativity. But it's so beautiful that people just don't want to do it, and they just put it there as a model. And they said, even though we make a lot of money from this, this is not who we are. Can you help teach us go back to who we are? right? So they're saying that they're willing to maybe even make a little bit less money, but they still want to fulfill their core vision and values. And because of that, you see that in their employees. So some guy was telling me that, hey, they moved there from Chicago and they just thought they would just work at Lego for 2 years because it looks great being on his resume, like a creative role at one of the most great companies in the world. And it's in this really boring small town called Billund, Denmark, which is like population like 1,500 or something like that. And there's not a lot of stuff going on. So he says like, yeah, I probably just leave and do a bunch of other things back to Chicago. But then he told me, but I've been here for 16 years now, and I don't see myself ever leaving. This is probably my destination career. Probably going to retire from Lego. I even met another guy who said he had a huge opportunity to be promoted to become a director, and it's a huge salary raise. But he said he turned it down because he said that he feels like his current role was better at fulfilling Lego's mission because it was close to the customer. And that's like unthinkable for most companies, right? Most companies, employees are playing the Core Drive 2 game, development accomplishment. Like I do a good job, I climb up the corporate ladder, I get a promotion, a raise, and I do a good job, and I keep doing that. But Lego, because they took sacrificial action to reinforce their believability on epic meaning and calling, employees also take sacrificial action. Say, I'm here to burn my life away to fulfill Lego's vision. And so that was just amazing. I love the culture there and the experience there.
Cool.
That's great, man. I have one last question, and then I think we'll probably call it a day here. But you're the OG, man. You're the GOAT. I mean, I didn't know anything about gamification or any of this stuff until you presented this, very cool, succinct model of how to understand it. And so, from your perspective, I think you gave that TED talk way back in 2012. Do you feel like the world is waking up to this knowledge? Do you feel like more and more companies and products and I guess people are starting to embrace gamification, or is there still a ways to go before it becomes something that is commonly understood?
Yeah, I think it has its ebbs and flows. Again, when I started in 2003, right? And so it was like 21 years ago. And back then it was just the crazy thing. Like I was the kid who people think I was just trying to make up new excuses to play games. But I stuck to it, and it was valuable. So I think there are times where companies reach out to me and say, "Hey, everyone's talking about gamification now. Harvard Business Review just wrote about gamification, and this is like every company's doing, and all our competitors are doing." And then I think it like kind of slows down a little bit. And partially it's also because there's a lot of really bad designs out there, a lot of bad practices, and it doesn't work. But over the years, I think it's been growing because now we also have great case studies that we increase business metrics by 30, 50%, 150, 450%. And so when you do it well, it does create value. And so it's not a technology trend where it's like, oh, this technology is no longer useful. It's actually a design philosophy and strategy that appeals to the human mind. So as long as people are doing correctly, I think it is growing and be more and more favored. And then there's also this controversy, like, okay, when it works really, really well, too well, is there a ethics problem or a morality problem? And I have a whole spiel on that. And there's definitely going to be people who use good tools in the wrong way. But I see the industry improving in its competency. Like I will sometimes look at some mobile app or something, and I look at it, it's like, oh, they obviously have learned the Octalysis framework. They applied a lot of these principles in it, and that's a good thing. I see my work creating impact for these companies, and again, not with these companies, but just with even the products that I have touched myself. We've impacted over 1.5 billion user experiences. So I think that is creating impact and making a difference in the world.
That's great, man. I think that it's powerful. It's powerful today as it was when I first learned about it. And yeah, man, I think it's amazing, and I can see it really doing some amazing things in the world. So, well, you know what? That's we're coming to the end of the show. YU-KAI, we just want to toast you. We toast the goats on the show. So I don't know if you have your water cup with you, everybody else, but cheers to you, sir, and for putting in all that work all these years on this whole thing.
That mug is awesome.
All right, man. Where if someone wants to reach out to you, a company or anybody, how should they contact you if they want to bring you on as a consultant or something like that to whatever project they're doing?
So to learn about everything I'm doing, the best way is to go to YU-KAI CHOU.com. If you search for gamification framework or expert on Google, it should be the top 4 results or number 1 result. If you want to reach me, the best way is through a new AI tool called Hit Me Up. So hitmeup.ai/YuKai, YUKAI. And there's an AI that says, hey, what do you need YuKai for? Blah, 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 blah. But then I read all of these messages and reply to all of them. So because I'm just getting way too much spam from all the other sources.
Okay, great. And we'll put all that in the show notes. So anybody out there who is interested, you can reach out to YU-KAI that way. Listen, man, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you. Fresh. Well, okay. So normally, okay, this is the last thing you guys. So every time on the show, I'll throw to Fresh. I'll be like, Fresh, what do the people need to do? And I don't know if there's a better way we should do this. We basically tell people what to do, but maybe after the show, we'll do another quick consultation to figure out better ways to motivate people. Anyway, Fresh, what do the people have to do as we get on out of here?
You gotta like, you gotta subscribe, you gotta hit the bell, you gotta comment, you gotta share it with your mom, share it with your aunt.
You got to find out why this means so much to you that you would want to share it.
And you know what? I'm not going to tell you what I normally tell you. Today, I'm going to tell you just gamify your life.